Something is off with this paladin. He looks a bit sketchy. And who are these shady characters that he is surrounding himself with? We can only say the paladin is not the main character or the hero anymore, but more like the anti-hero. It was needed, however, to reach newfounded powers never seen before. It seems like the paladin visited some sinister places in the pursuit of making his damage output transcend to a whole new level. Such new heights of power that the paladin can now command and control everything around him with a mere finger snap, and the spells that he casts always seem to successfully be casted on his enemies for some reason. How does he do that? Well, no one knows. Spell save DC, what is that? The paladin also hits his enemies with such ferocity and intensity that they get one-tapped all the time, and with such lethal damage output he can take many enemies at the same time, all by himself, on the so-called honor mode. But the paladin goes beyond just killing his enemies. He can hit his enemies with such ruthlessness that they simply end up in another dimension altogether. Yes, the swing of the sword was mastered to such a degree that breaking the time-space continuum is a normal occurrence for the paladin, which in turn culminates into a hit so powerful that the target ends up in another plane of existence altogether. Only the paladin can reach these type of dimension-altering attacks. However, to get there, some class blood mingling is needed with some swords bard. Unironically, 2 paladin, 10 swords bard might be the best paladin build out there. You might think, but 2 levels in paladin only, is it really still a paladin build? Absolutely is the answer, because you only need 2 levels in paladin to unlock your beloved smites, but 10 bard gives you a super exclusive nuclear smite that can only be obtained through 10 levels of swords bard. So the creative ones among us might even find a way to spell 10 swords bard as 10 extra paladin, but obtained through a different class. Now, multiclassing with swords bard is absolutely amazing, honestly, because you get full caster progression. That means a ton of spell slots to use all your smites on, and that means an abundant amount of damage. And not only that, swords bard gives you an amazing selection of spells that synergize so extremely well with paladin. The new question becomes, which paladin class is the real paladin class? We're talking spells like hold person and hold monster that give you guaranteed crits for both your attacks and your smites, which just means nuclear damage output. We're talking spells like command, which can play with your enemies like they're toys and line them up perfectly for your AoE attacks. Oh yeah, I forgot to say it, but with swords bard you unlock slashing flourish as well, which can hit multiple enemies at the same time, and all those individual instances of hitting your enemies with this AoE attack also stack with your smites. So a bunch of damage output there. But to really make this build work as optimal as possible, we need to have 2 items. 2 key items. The second you put these 2 items on, you will never ever take them off again. Just like I found this amazing game absolutely no one has ever heard of. This game has the best graphics around on mobile, brutal boss battles, deep tactical gameplay, and literally hundreds of champions for you to meet, including new mythical champions. My personal favorite champion is Pixneedle, simply because of her insane design. Just look at this. And this champion also has an amazing kit. Her aura skill increases your team's resistance, which is great for countering other wintry champions like Tormund the Cold. She also places valuable buffs and debuffs such as Perfect Veil, increased defense, continuous heal, weaken, and freeze, giving you a lot of utility for in combat. I would recommend you to add this wintry champion to your collection. It is quite fitting for this time of the year. Another wintry champion that I like is Whirlim Frostking, which design-wise already indicates that this guy's a true powerhouse. This guy can do it all, truly. He blasts your enemies like they're nothing, and at the same time provides very valuable buffs like increased defense and crit damage. And when the weather outside is frightful, you need something delightful, right? Like the Cursed City, which is one of Raid's biggest features since the Doom Tower. With 100 stages to complete, with some of these stages including fighting 2 of Raid's bosses at the same time. Completing the Cursed City gives you great rewards, including a mythical champion. So it is the perfect time for you to download Raid Shadow Legends to not miss out on all of that. And to do that, click my link in the description or scan my QR code on screen to get insane bonuses available only via my link. You'll get 2 epic champions with the link, namely Lightsworn and Juliana is available after reaching level 15. Additionally, once you're in game, use the promo code RAIDXMS for new and old players. You can find me in game as well, just search my name, and you definitely don't want to miss out on joining my new clan, Giant Willy Gamers. The Band of the Mystic Scoundrel and the Helmet of Arcane Acuity. The Band of the Mystic Scoundrel makes all your enchantment and illusion spells now active on a bonus action after attacking something. That means exactly what you think. We attack and then we can accordingly use Hold Person for the entire field on a mere bonus action, and then accordingly critically annihilate every single one of these enemies one by one, and absolutely nothing will stop us. Now, to illustrate how good enchantment and illusion spells spells are, let's go over a few of them. The already mentioned Hold Person and Hold Monster that make all your attacks critical hits while stunning the enemy are such spells, for example. So basically you can see this as an infinite guaranteed critical hits generating build on a bonus action. But it's not just Hold Person and Hold Monster. Confusion, for example, one of the strongest CC spells in the game where enemies will simply kill each other, now available on a bonus action. Hypnotic Patron, to make dozens of enemies in one cast completely useless, available on a bonus action. Command, make all enemies drop their weapons like zombies or approach you for your slashing flourishes to nuke them all in one go with your stackable divine smites on a bonus action. But I hear you asking, how do you actually make sure all these spells successfully apply on your enemies? That's exactly where the Helmet of Arcane Acuity comes into play. The Helmet of Arcane Acuity builds up 2 stacks of Arcane Acuity every time you hit something. And with a build like this, where we have multiple attacks per turn thanks to level 6 Bard, as well as just AoE attacks that we also definitely want to utilize, we build up Arcane Acuity extremely fast. Many stacks of them even until we reach the cap. And for those that don't know what Arcane Acuity entails, you can basically read it as +1 spell save DC and +1 attack rolls. Spell save DC is what your enemy needs to roll higher than to resist your crowd control in this case. But because our spell save DC gets so high with this build, they can simply just not outroll it anymore, meaning all our powerful CC is pretty much guaranteed applied thanks to our helmet. And let me just say it once more, all those guaranteed amazing crowd control spells are now on a bonus action. The spells will mostly function as a setup for our own attacks, making this build an amazing melee striker DPS build where you can just trivialize many fights with beautiful high numbers, crits and smite stacking. It is also why we take Banishing Smite, the trophy of the Swords Bard multiclass route, unlocked at level 10 through the class Magical Secrets. Banishing Smite is a level 5 spell that deals 5d10 force damage. So this nuclear ability in itself can already one-shot many enemies in the game without even needing to do anything in addition. Keep in mind, force damage is one of the best damage types in the game because there are practically no enemies that have resistance to it, which is a huge bonus obviously and another plus for this ability. With Banishing Smite you have amazing Nova damage for those insane bursty plays where you want to get rid of a beefy boss or just any enemy with a lot of HP as fast as possible. It stacks with your Hold Person and Monster initial effect as well, in the sense that your Banishing Smite will be a critical hit even though both are concentration spells. Now if the enemy actually does survive the initial hit, you can still stack it with your Divine Smites for even higher damage. We're talking hundreds and hundreds of damage within a single strike. You can literally just melt the tankiest enemies in the game within mere seconds, and I'm not exaggerating as you see from the footage. Banishing Smite has then also the amazing additional effect of just banishing your enemy in case they don't die, like the name says. So that means the enemy in those cases just completely disappears from the field, giving you one less enemy to worry about for a few turns and giving you the ability to hand down the rest in the time being. This in itself already can be a huge momentum for completely tipping the tides of the battle in you and your party's favor. Banishing Smite being a level 5 smite is also great synergy wise with Divine Smite, which has additional upcasting benefits till level 4 maximum. After that, Divine Smite doesn't accordingly upcast, so it's a waste using your level 5 or 6 slots on it. So level 4 slots you use your Divine Smites, and then level 5 you use your Banishing Smites on the most threatening targets you want to burst down as fast as possible. Like I said, the smite stacks, but you have to enable this however in your spellbook to make sure you can stack your Divine Smites with your Banishing Smites, but just more generally all your attacks, like just your normal attacks, but also your AoE attacks. With all of that being said, let's then dive into the leveling process. This build is a continuation to my Perfect Paladin Get OP early video where we truly discussed level 1 to level 7, so check that video out for those first 7 levels. But also to just understand all the fundamentals of the Paladin class like combos, oaths, smites and smite stacking, of which all will also be very important and relevant for this video. So if anything confuses you in this video, then that's because it was truly covered in part 1, and I would highly recommend you to watch that video as well so you have a good overview of everything you need to know. At level 8, it is a perfect time to respec the build and into this build. Reason why is because we get 2 Paladin as well as 6 Swords Bard in one go at level 8, and that means we get the extra attack from level 6 Swords Bard right away and our Paladin Smites from level 2 all in one go. And I do highly prefer to monoclass Paladin pre-level 7, the fast extra attack at level 5, the auras at level 6 and 7, and getting smites as soon as possible, as well as a bunch of utility for those early levels with gear that accordingly synergize extremely well as as I showed you in part 1 with my Ancients build. If you remember, we picked up a bunch of amazing Act 1 gear that all synergized very well with Ancients, and every level up was a godsend pretty much when not spreading your levels thin due to multi-classing. But now we can safely multi-class without missing too much. So for this build, in terms of leveling, we start with 2 Paladin into 10 Sword Sparts with race abilities and all that stuff exactly like shown in part 1, but we start with Paladin instead of Bard due to the Paladin giving you more HP, so more sustain, but also heavy armor proficiency, giving you great heavy armor options, and I do really like that wisdom saving throw proficiency of the Paladin as well. 2 levels in Paladin, we still remain loyal to the Ancients for our oath. You cast it on a bonus action, so it's synergized with our actual attacks, and it's just nice. A 2-turn heal that applies on your entire team, and you can up down to party members without needing to extend a spell slot. Really good. A bunch of value to be found there. At level 2 Paladin, we get defense for some extra armor class as our fighting style. We will use two-handed weapons still, but we don't need great weapon fighting anymore, as we will get a feat that replaces the idea of this fighting style, but at the same time will also do a much better job. We still take all elemental smites here just for those scenarios where an enemy might potentially have a vulnerability to set elemental damage tied to any of these 3 smites, so double the damage in those scenarios. Especially nice if you then accordingly also upcast the smite. We get Divine Favor for some extra damage if ever needed, but the main spell here is going to be the command spell because it synergizes extremely well with the rest of our build. And all command options are great, to be honest. Dropping your enemy's weapons to deny them their turn or just to steal their weapons and render them completely useless is a really nice addition to the build. But what is amazing about command is that it's not a concentration spell, unlike most crowd control spells in the game, so you can combo it on a bonus action through our ring with one of our big boy crowd control spells like Hold Monster or Hold Person or Confusion to then make another enemy prone through the grovel option, for example. And prone is another amazing CC, gives everyone advantage in your team attacking the unfortunate victim. So that's multiple different types of CC inflicted in the same turn. Needless to say, that gives you a lot of control on the battlefield. Command approach is probably the best for this build, however, specifically though because it does 2 things. 1, it makes your enemies skip their turn, and while that's happening, 2, it lines your enemies perfectly in front of you for your slashing flourishes. And as you know, our slashing flourishes are absolutely amazing for this build, as these AoE attacks will already deal a lot of damage on their own, but it's also stackable with our smites, so those are like 8 instances of a lot of damage within a single turn. And command approach is just really amazing to set up that combo because you can upcast command approach and basically just draw literally everyone to you to then AoE nuke them and kill them off quickly with slashing flourish into divine smite abuse. It is also very fun to do that and to set it up. At level 3 we then get our first Bard level, and immediately we get a bunch of useful stuff. Cantrip wise, Vicious Mockery. It's an enchantment spell, so it's synergized with our ring, but it deals damage and makes our enemy more likely to miss their attack, and honestly that's just great value for a cantrip. Minor Illusion for the potential AoE setups for slashing flourish, as well as some other abilities obtained through gear. Then spells, we get as much purple as possible basically. Dash's Hideous Laughter for essentially what is a stun on a level 1 spell. Dissonant Whispers for the frightening, and it also deals very respectable damage for a level 1 spell. Both of these spells are some of the best level 1 spells in my opinion in the game, and they synergize extremely well with this build because both of them are enchantment spells, so we can cast them on a bonus action as well. For the other level 1 spells, you want to grab Longstrider for the extra movement and Speak with Animals for all the extra dialogue and quests if you don't have a source of either yet in your party composition. However, if you do have them somewhere else in your party, I recommend grabbing Fairy Fire here for the party-wide advantage and then Healing Word just in case. And whatever you didn't pick, pick it at level 4 Bard. If you need more options, Featherfall and Disguise Self are also great options here. You also get Song of Rest here, by the way, which is basically like a third short rest for your entire party. Really nice. It is a bunch of healing and a lot of mechanics that reset, like a Monk's Chi points or Warlock spell slots, for example. Level 5 total or level 3 Bard is a big one, as you can choose your subclass now. We go College of Swords here to unlock our newfound amazing skills and powers with swords. Our subclass gives us all the flourish attacks, and I've highlighted the slashing flourish one already, but you also get defensive flourish, which can situationally be very good actually. This attack gives you 4 extra armor class, so your enemy's next attacks have a higher likelihood to miss, and while enforcing that condition, you still get your regular damage stackable with your smites out. You also get a mobile flourish here, which can be used for tactical plays where you can push enemies into chasms for insta kills thanks to the pushback factor of the ability, and it also has a Misty Step ingrained in it basically, so you can use the ranged version to quickly move from A to B on the battlefield if it's needed. Can situationally be very good when you can't reach the target through normal means. While the other 2 flourish attacks have great situational uses, slashing flourish is obviously going to be the big player here, as you probably by now know from me already mentioning it a few times. You really just want to use it as often as possible just to reduce the number of threats on the field as fast as possible. And I've already said everything needed to be said about this amazing AoE attack. And in line of great things that you can get at this level, hold person. We finally have it. This thing will send you on a journey of many critical hits. Many enemies that get eviscerated within seconds. Many enemies that will just simply have no chance against you going forward. And oh, did I already mention? We have it on a bonus action thanks to our shiny ring as well. You also get a fighting style choice at level 5, but it's not relevant, so pick either one. Think about it like this, which one would you rather have been in an alternative universe, because neither fighting style applies to us. Level 6 is another huge one. Counterpoints get Blade Ward for some extra sustain. Then we get probably one of the most underrated level 2 spells of all time, Blindness. As you may know from my other videos, it is not a concentration spell and it applies for many turns. Basically whatever it's casted on will miss their attacks more often, and they can't attack outside of a very small range. So it destroys casters and rangers, and your entire team will have advantage against whatever is blinded. Very good spell for many different scenarios. And we get our beloved feat here, like in part 1, we get it again. We can't go too long without it. Great Weapon Master. That juicy plus 10 to our damage output that synergizes extremely well with this build with the many attacks in it. It also gives us the opportunity to attack on a bonus action for whenever we need it. Really good. And the attack roll penalty is going to be completely offset pretty much with this build. You'll see how when we get to gear. Level 7 we get another amazing spell, the Glyph of Warding. You can use its sleep version to induce sleep on like a bunch of targets at the same time, which in turn gives us advantage, and as being a melee striker, critical hits as well. So really good actually, especially because it has a relatively big radius. And outside of that, Glyph of Warding also has the possibility to push back enemies into chasms, and honestly it's just a great AoE damaging spell as well that we get to use, and it has synergies with things like wetness with the cold and lighting options for double the damage. So all round a great pick here. Level 8 is another huge level because we get our extra attack, which is also the primary reason why we use level 8 as the respec point. Furthermore, we get another amazing spell right here, an illusion spell this time, Hypnotic Pattern, and this thing can give you absolute insane control on the battlefield. Just check its radius. Hypnotizing your enemies is a really good status effect. It basically means you can't do anything whatsoever going forward. Accordingly, using this AoE spell to a bunch of targets will thus logically give you massive action economy advantage to go full out nuclear on the subsequent turn with your entire party to just simply wipe out everyone. What is also great is that you can use it as like a backup plan for when things go south and you yourself are CC'd, because you can still cast a spell when you're silenced. And getting an AoE ability with the potential to do something like that to the entire battlefield on a mere bonus action is a lot of power, let's say. To match the insane power that we got at level 8, we then also need another banger at level 9. Naturally, Confusion. That's the only thing I'm going to say right here. Okay, maybe I'll say some more, but this thing is complete domination. It's yet another AoE spell with a big radius, and yet another spell that we can use on a bonus action thanks to our shiny bling. Confusion just breaks the AI of the enemies completely. That's just how you have to see it. They skip turns, do nothing useful, and will even start attacking each other. You can grab some popcorn in the meantime and just enjoy the show while you win the battle. But with again so much momentum gained in your favor, you can also destroy your enemies while your enemies are destroying your enemies. Say if you have a plane to catch or so. Level 10 is a quickie. There's no other level 4 spell that you really need, so I would just grab Enhance Ability here, which can be really nice for those ability checks. You don't want to wipe your honor mode run due to some dialogue failing, and Enhance Ability is like a great alternative to guidance. It helps you succeed. Level 10 we also get another feat, and we're going to go with Savage Attacker here. Huge pick. If there's one class in the game that profits the absolute most from this feat, it's the Paladin and its plethora of smites, because as you may or may not know, Savage Attacker rolls 2 damage die for every single aspect of your melee weapon attacks. So not just the normal attacks, not just the elemental damage associated with those attacks, but also all your smites. And smites have a bunch of die to roll to determine your ultimate and total damage roll. It's why the range of damage is huge. 5 to 40 damage, for example, for a level 4 Divine Smite. Yeah, that range is absolutely bonkers. And that's because it's a 5d8 roll. So 5 different die are rolled to determine the roll. And Savage Attacker rolls twice for all 5 die, and then picks the highest value out of each pair accordingly and adds those values up, in addition to all the other die associated to your melee weapon attacks. So as you probably can imagine, it's on average going to be a lot of extra damage, especially now that we have higher level smites that require more die. So a great moment to get this feat. Level 11 we get our Hold Person counterpart, Hold Monster. With Hold Person we can target all humanoid enemies in the game, but now with Hold Monster we can target everything else in the game as well, except for undead, but like all monsters, elementals, animals, weird creatures that aren't humans, and so on. And it does exactly the same thing as Hold Person, but it now broadens our application of this type of spell, so basically more stuns and a lot more critical hits for us, amplifying our damage output even more. Level 12 is then a big one because we get our Banishing Smite. Smite. Aside from the big boy nuclear spell that we already talked about, you also get a cantrip. Friends is a good pick here for the role-playing options. Spell-wise, I would just go Mass Cure Wounds here for if things go south, but Dominant Person is alternatively also a fun spell. It's an enchantment spell as well, so you know what that means. You don't really need it when we already have Confusion, but it's still fun to specifically target someone you hate and completely control their brain basically. For magical secrets then, Banishing Smite, like already said, you've seen the absolute rampage and destruction that we can cause with the spell earlier on in this video, and how it synergizes very well with the rest of our kit, so nothing else more to add to it. Grab it immediately right off the bat. And the other magical secret that is going to give us huge value here is going to be Counterspell. It's one of the best spells in the game, and having it on a melee DPS striker is huge value, especially because our reaction slot is still empty, and you can negate so many annoying crowd control spells and just generally really powerful spells with Counterspell. It's just insane value, and we have to take it. That covers leveling then. I've already mentioned the two key items gear-wise for this build, the helmet and the ring, which are the main characters, one might say, gear-wise, but we get a lot of other good stuff in our gear as well that can truly ascend the build to another level. Let's start off with our ring, the Risky Ring. Remember Great Weapon Master and its annoying penalty? Completely trivialized this way. The ring is going to give us advantage on all of our attacks, and it's obtained pretty much where we stopped in part 1, namely at the Moonrise Towers, and in turn the ring has a penalty as well for giving us advantage for all our attacks, obviously because otherwise it would be broken beyond repair, but in our case the penalty doesn't really matter, as we will crowd control and destroy everything before the enemy ever can become annoying towards us anyways. For our amulet, we get the Amulet of Greater Health. Absolutely amazing pick for this build, as we are going to be a lot in the melee range of our enemies and amidst the heat of the battle, so the extra HP is very welcome for sustain. It is a bunch of extra HP, and we already have a great increase to our spell save DC, so applying our powerful spells isn't going to be a problem whatsoever with this build. But with our amulet, the drawing, the picture, the artistic piece is finally fully completed, because we now also have that juicy advantage on Constitution saving throws, which means we will not just have a great time applying spells, but also maintaining those spells, our concentration spells, which we use a lot, and something on a bonus action. For our cloak, we get the Cloak of the Weave just for the initial spell save DC, for when we haven't built up those arcane acuity stacks yet. Helps out tremendously in like a turn 1 hold person or monster for example, and it also has that absorb elements effect, which is actually a really nice bonus. It basically just means more defense and more offense at the same time. For our gloves, we get the Gauntlets of Hill Giant Strength, which will now put our strength at a whopping 23 without needing to use a single buff for it. Because we have these gloves, now you can also respec your stats. If you're still using the stats from part 1 like this, we completely dump strength now and give dexterity the most points. If you have access to Anti-Ethel's buff for this build, put dexterity at 17 to then get it to 20 ultimately through Anti-Ethel's Hair and the Mirror of Laws. If Anti-Ethel is not an option however, put it at 16 to get it ultimately to 18 through the Mirror of Laws, and the remainder of your abilities will just stay the same like in part 1. Now we have both high dexterity as well as high strength, and our whopping 23 strength is going to make our damage output and accuracy amazing, and high dexterity is going to give us a bunch of initiative, and the faster we get rid of threatening enemies, the better obviously. For boots, we're going to go with the Helldusk boots. These are going to make us immune to the many difficult terrain-inducing spells in the game, and thus these boots will give us absolutely amazing mobility, which is exactly what we need as a melee DPS that wants to attack as much as possible. With the boots, we can also use a reaction to reroll a failed saving throw, which is another amazing aspect to these boots for denying CC and damage. And it then also has a super buffed Misty Step through Hellcrawler, because you can teleport with your boots and then land like a meteorite, blowing everything up around you, making it a great engaging tool to get to your victims, for example, to start off the fight in style, to say the least. Now for your chest piece and weapon, there's going to be an amazing synergy. For it, we have to visit the Bhaalist Temple though, to get the incredible Bhaalist armor to 1. Give us even more initiative, but more importantly 2. Make our enemies vulnerable to piercing damage. And we get piercing damage through our magnificent weapon, the Nyrulna, which is already going to be super buffed through Savage Attacker and Great Weapon Master, but its damage type is piercing since it is a trident, so logically it pierces. Bhaalist armor is then going to buff all our instances of piercing damage through this two-handed magnificent beast, and accordingly you're going to hit absolute insane numbers with it, and the weapon looks fantastic as well. The Nyrulna doesn't just do that though, it also has ingrained thunder damage on top of its piercing damage as a bonus, and it gives you even more movement, which works very well with our idea of wanting to be as proactive as possible on the battlefield as a melee striker. Then if that wasn't enough, you also get some neat AoE abilities with it too that can insta-kill enemies, but also potentially apply AoE bleeding and give you this great rush to then AoE nuke a bunch bunch of enemies in one go with your thunder damage. With that, we have discussed everything, but most importantly here is obviously how everything ultimately ties together. Our two-handed piercing weapon that is going to be incredibly amplified through our chest armor and feats, which will mean a lot of damage output already in its essence, but that becomes even better through our ability to permanently build up a bunch of arcane acuity stacks to make sure our powerful crowd control spells will all land through our ring on a bonus action, which in turn is going to give us a bunch of critical hits, so even better damage, but through the control of our enemies also even more guaranteed and sustained damage, which is also an important factor. And the rest of our kit and gear all enhances those main ideas and insane damage output through giving us advantages in many other ways like mobility, sustain, defense, a good variety of crowd control spells, and utility. We can safely say that if you're going to play as a paladin with this build, you will have a great time because it is truly something else. Like, subscribe, you know exactly what to do, but we can also play a game for those that have watched like 30 videos of mine but are still not subscribed. Take a walk, drink a cup of tea, try the build out, and if you then accordingly absolutely annihilate everyone like I said you would, come back and strike that subscribe button with such ferocity that it causes a rift in your house that can function as a portal to another dimension. If you like my videos and want to support the channel, consider becoming a patron. I also have full and condensed written guides there for all my builds, so for those that like the idea of that, check it out. And remember, make sure to check out Raid Shadow Legends, link for it will be in the description, and I'll see you in the battlefield.